Okay, so why are so many political experts talking about the 2026 U.S. midterms as potentially the most important election of this decade? Could they really shift power long term, maybe even permanently? We're going to unpack these really big questions today, pulling from this stack of sources you've given us, because, I mean, the material suggests there's something much deeper going on than just your typical election cycle.
Yeah, what's really striking when you look at the analysis is how all these different threads seem to connect. You've got historical patterns, right?
Mm.
Then there's new polling data, these intense legislative fights. It's not just that they're happening at the same time. It feels like they're amplifying each other, creating this real political pressure cooker. It feels pretty unique for this decade. So our mission here is really to pull out the key insights from all this information to give you, a shortcut to understanding what could genuinely be a pivotal moment in American politics.
Right. And to really get a handle on 2026, we kind of have to look back first. Because the research points to this classic historical pattern, the 6-year ditch. Heard that one before. It's this idea that the president's party usually loses seats in the midterms, especially in their second term. And, well, this time, it's President Trump facing that exact test.
Exactly. And his historical pattern is definitely something to watch.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole story here. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources really emphasize that 2026 is different. History suggests Republicans could lose ground, sure, but you've got other huge factors at play. Things like redistricting battles, ongoing economic anxiety, these significant shifts in who supports which party,
Yeah.
and even just differences in who actually turns out to vote in a midterm versus a presidential year. It's like a multi-front war for both parties. Old strategies might not work. Like, think about Ohio. The economic issues plus specific demographic shifts there, that could turn a simple itch into something much bigger, like a real realignment.
Okay, so history is one piece. But what about right now? The latest indicators, we're seeing polling data since 2024 that shows some, well, pretty interesting movement. Some surveys actually have Democrats ahead of Republicans by, what, 6 to 8 points? That seems significant. So what does the research tell us about where these shifts might be happening? Are traditional strongholds actually, cracking, or is it more subtle?
Well, the data certainly suggests we might be witnessing a political realignment, a pretty significant one, potentially. It looks like those longstanding party loyalties are shifting. You see it changing along generational lines, ideology, even regionally. And that's opened up completely new battlegrounds. The analysis points specifically to states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Wisconsin, suggesting they could potentially flip, driven by that economic dissatisfaction we talked about, and also just changing demographics. This isn't just tinkering around the edges. It could be a real redrawing of the political map.
Understanding those big shifts is key. But let's zoom in a bit. Let's talk about the House of Representatives, because the battle lines there seem incredibly sharp. The numbers are stark. Democrats need just 3 seats, 3, to gain control. So what's really driving this incredibly tight race, especially when you factor in President Trump's big budget bill, the one with the massive tax cuts, but also those deep cuts to Medicaid and SNAP?
Right, and from the Democratic viewpoint, as it's presented in the information, that bill is seen as really harmful to middle-class Americans. So naturally, it's become a central talking point for them in their campaigns. The materials you shared make it clear this proposed legislation is a powerful rallying cry for the opposition. And then there's redistricting. That's created new competitive seats, especially in unexpected places like California and Texas. These districts have shifted, maybe leaning a bit more blue or a bit more red than before. These are really targeted changes, but they could have huge impacts given how close the overall margin is.
Okay, so with the House fight being so intense and issues like that budget bill front and center, it does bring up this idea of a potential blue wave for the Democrats. But the research suggests maybe it wouldn't look quite like the 2018 wave. Is that right? This one might rely more on those reliable midterm voters, not necessarily the big surge of new Trump supporters we saw in 2024.
That's one interpretation, yeah. But then conversely, you look at Republican insiders, according to these documents, they seem confident they can actually defy those historical trends like the 6-year itch. Their strategy appears to be nationalizing the midterms, making them less about local candidates, more about Trump, basically trying to treat it like a presidential election to get his core supporters out again. So that really highlights a key question, doesn't it? Which is more powerful?
Yeah.
Party unity or maybe party division in mobilizing voters? Because Democrats, for their part, are definitely watching the GOP's internal conflicts, maybe hoping that pushes some voters their way.
Makes sense. Okay, beyond the House, let's widen the lens again to the Senate. There are 35 seats up for grabs there. Control could absolutely shift. And the sources mention some high-profile figures like Sherrod Brown possibly eyeing a return, which could really shake things up in a key state like Ohio. But what other races should we be paying attention to? The ones that maybe don't grab the national headlines quite as much.
Oh, definitely. And when you connect this to the bigger political picture, you absolutely cannot forget the other races on the ballot. We're talking about 39 gubernatorial elections. Governors hold a lot of power. And several attorney general races, too. These state-level contests,
Yeah.
they often seem quieter, but they're really the engines shaping power for the next decade, especially when it comes to things like future redistricting battles
Right.
and just how state policies get implemented, things that affect your daily life directly. They really do lay the groundwork.
Right. And in all these races, especially the close ones, there's this other factor, ticket splitting.
Mm.
That's where voters, cross party lines. They vote for a Democrat for one office, a Republican for another, even now when things feel so polarized.
It really raises an important question, doesn't it? In this hyper-polarized climate, how much does that individual voter's choice still matter? The materials we looked at suggest this behavior, this ticket splitting, it could absolutely be the decisive factor in a lot of these tight races, particularly in those swing districts, where neither party really has a lock. It suggests that maybe, despite all the national noise, that individual independent decision could still be the ultimate decider.
So bringing this all together, wow, it really becomes clear. The 2026 midterms are shaping up to be much more than just another election. From the tiny details of redistricted lines in one county all the way up to these potentially huge shifts in who votes for which party, the sources you provided paint this picture of a real potential turning point. This isn't just about who controls Congress for 2 years. It feels like it's about whether the actual foundations of American political alignment might get rewritten, which would obviously determine policy, the national direction, maybe for a whole generation.
Yeah, ultimately, the analysis suggests 2026 could really kick off a whole new political era, maybe through these realigned party coalitions we talked about, or maybe through new ways information or disinformation shapes things. On the other hand, a really strong Republican turnout could cement Trump's influence further, turning these midterms almost into a presidential referendum like they want. And just the redistricting drama alone, that's going to either strengthen or weaken the Democrats at state and federal levels for years, no question. So for you listening, the big question really remains, is history going to repeat itself? Or could it be completely rewritten this time?
A lot to think about there. And if you're intrigued by the power of those individual voter choices we mentioned, you definitely won't want to miss our next deep dive. Ticket splitting voters, the silent power in U.S. elections.